This episode was co-produced with Startup Days, the leading startup conference in Switzerland. Swisspreneurs' goal is to advance entrepreneurship in Switzerland, so we've partnered up with Startup Days to produce 5 episodes with key Swiss ecosystem players. If you'd like to see them up close and personal, get your ticket for Startup Days 2022, taking place on May 19th in Bern. Visit startupdays.ch. Together, we make Switzerland more startup.
You have this bias of reading the news where you feel like everybody raised 50 million every year, which is not exactly the case when you know the ecosystem by within.
Welcome to the Swisspreneurs Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Olivier, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneurs Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, Sylvan. Thank you for welcoming me. Super nice to be here today.
You're the partner for technology investments at VI Partners, the longest established VC team here in Switzerland. And we jump right in. Why did you actually want to become a VC investor in the first place?
It's a tricky question. Yeah, thanks for asking. I don't think there's many people that get out of school and think, I want to be a VC.
Right.
Because especially at the time where I got out of school, venture capital was, nearly did not exist, especially in Europe, especially in France where I grew up. So, it comes from various experiences and bumping into people. And so what happened is I built a startup 10 years ago. I was not successful, but I learned a lot. And then I came to Switzerland to do an MBA, and after it, I was like, maybe I could go to the other side of the table. Maybe supporting founders and investing in them would be the right fit for me. So it took me some 2 intermediary jobs, but I got there, and super happy with the outcome. Yeah.
So it's just like not a big master plan behind becoming a VC, right? That's basically the story.
To be honest, I never had a career plan. In interviews when people are telling me, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I had no clue. I think I changed career 5 times in a bit more than 15 years of work experience. And every time it was based on opportunities, showing up a bit like randomly. I think, luck favors the prepared. So I was quite open to talk to people and explore new paths. And this guy showed up, and I sized it,
Going with the flow, so to speak.
Yeah.
You also joined VI Partners just recently, in March 2022, actually. And before that, you were leading the corporate venture capital division at the Swiss Post. What led you to that decision to switch from corporate venture capital to VI Partners?
Yeah, so maybe first, when you realize that you might be interested to work in VC, it's very hard to find a position, right? It's to give you an idea. When I'm a software engineer and I have a master degree in finance on top of it, and in my master degree in finance, half of the class at the time was going into trading floor activities, and the other half was going into corporate finance, which means M&A, private equity, VC. Mm-hmm. I think like one guy in 10 years went into VC. Maybe 50 or 100 went into private equity, and thousands went into M&A, just to give an idea of the math at the time, right? So it's not like, I want to go into VC and you get into VC the next day. It's more than when I saw the opportunity to join Swiss Post Ventures now 5 years ago, I found it a mind-blowing experience and possibility showing up. So I sized it, and 5 years later, when VI Partners approached me because they were looking for a new partner to do tech investment, I found I've done 5 years at Swiss Post. I've built a team of 3 people. We've done 14 investments. We've done 2 successful exits with Brink and Testing Time. It's a nice track record. And can I bring Swiss Post Ventures to the next level? And how does it compare with the opportunity at VI Partners? And after a few weeks of reflection and talking to the whole VI Partners team, it became absolutely obvious that the right choice would be to go with VI Partners. And at the same time, I made sure that the activity at Swiss Post would continue to be strong. Mm-hmm. And they now recruited a third team member, Ivo Runner. Under Boyman, who joined a year and a half ago, is now, has stepped in my shoes. Raphael Fessler, who joined 3 years ago, is been promoted. I think the team at Swiss Post Ventures is very strong today, and I think they will continue to do a very good job.
Amazing. So the timing probably couldn't be better to make that transition, to make that switch. Can you also talk a bit about your investment focus at VI Partners? What are you investing in?
Yeah, we do. So we do mostly B2B SaaS, right? We like software. The team, Joe, Alain, and Cyril being a venture partner, is quite heavily interested in software. We also have a look a bit at hardware, but it's a bit more difficult cases to finance. And as I said, B2B software as a service, tools that help industrial companies to transform and to get more efficient and to get massive productivity efficiencies. That's the kind of stuff we like to finance. To give examples, a year and a half ago, Joe has conducted an investment in Acodis, Winterthur-based company, doing document management, extraction of data from normal documents. It's a bit of democratization of machine learning and artificial intelligence for people like you and me that want to easily get access to the power of machine learning without having to code.
Absolutely, yeah. We also had the founder on a podcast. That was a really great story that we tackled there. And, some people, they know, okay, there are VCs out there, but they want to know a bit more and have a look behind the scenes. So how does a typical day in your life look like? If there's even such a thing, I have no clue.
It's very tricky to talk about a typical day, but I would say, the classic day is you have a few phone calls, planned with discovery companies, right? You want to get in touch with founders, you receive the pitch deck, they've been introduced by someone, and you're excited to have a look. And so I would say 2 to 3 calls a day with new companies, maybe 2 to 3 calls a day with potential co-investors, maybe people who could join one of your portfolio company as an employee, some VCs. And on top of it, you have a lot of completely random calls, usually from portfolio companies, companies you have invested in, and they call you because they have an issue they'd like to solve. They'd like you to know how to do it. Should we raise money now? Should I hire this person? It's not part of the budget. How to get it accepted by the board? Should I fire this person? Which is usually the most tricky question.
Right.
And then you do a few emails. You try to read a bit of documentation. You try to know what's going on in the market because feeling the pace of the ecosystem is important.
So there's really not a typical day. It's also a lot of reactive things that are thrown at you to solve problems and to, fight the fires, basically.
You try to be organized and you try to have a day that is planned, and usually at the last minute it gets a bit... I like those, moments like this week where a lot of people are in holidays. Perfect, and so the days are much more predictable. Yeah. But normal time, I pretty like... You need to adapt constantly. Yeah. You need to be quite reactive. You need to be available often, evenings and weekends, because that's the moment where entrepreneurs think and they have time. They're not in operations, they're in thinking mode. That's the time when you get usually WhatsApp signal messages and phone calls. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're also here to talk about challenges. So the biggest challenge that you mentioned to me when you did the preparation for this conversation is how to get more money into Swiss VCs.
Yeah.
I feel like we have a good momentum. There are bigger rounds that are being closed, also big investors joining the Swiss startup ecosystem, but there's still a lack for especially the later part, the growth financing. So please elaborate a bit more why this is an important challenge and how we could potentially solve it.
Yeah, maybe first, one key concept in venture capital is the power law. The distribution of returns is absolutely not following a normal Gaussian curve. And it applies also to fundraising. So you see in the news, the big fundraising, the Yokoi success, that kind of stuff. What you don't see is all the very good but not exceptional startups that still, struggle to raise money from qualified investors. And so you have this bias of reading the news where you feel like everybody raised 50 million, every year, right, which is not exactly the case when you know the ecosystem by within. And the second aspect is, when you ask me about when we did the preparation, I was reading the book that is in the back there, which is Deep Tech Nation, written by Dominique Maigret, which is a very good book, by the way. And I think it's a must read for people evolving in the ecosystem. And I think Dominique Maigret of Swisscom Ventures, makes a point that there's not enough growth capital in the country. Mm-hmm. And I believe that one reason for this is that the pension funds, the Swiss pension funds, are not yet investing in VC, or very few of them. To give an order of magnitude, the Swiss pension fund system, it's 1 trillion of money.
It's insane.
And, today it's estimated that 1% of it goes into private equity, which is 10 billion. But usually it goes into very international private equity. And within the private equity bucket, it goes mostly into the buyouts, the more traditional private equity, much less into VC. So there's no clear estimation of how much money from pension funds is going into VC, but clearly not enough. So one key element to get more money into growth stage companies is typically to get the Swiss pension funds to be more aware of that tool, especially if you think about it. Your savings are going into this system, right? And you probably want to get a better future. So you would welcome, as a client of the Swiss pension fund system, you certainly would welcome that they invest more in the future. Not only guys that are, optimizing and milking the cows like private equity guys, right, but more in guys that are helping to shape the future. And especially if this future is with Swiss companies and Swiss tech companies, I think there's a very good marketing story. And I think as an ecosystem, especially VCs, we have to cultivate the aspect. We have to communicate to the Swiss pension fund employees and their advisors that there is this opportunity out there, and it's a very good opportunity in terms of long-term returns, and it's also a very interesting marketing opportunity for them to go to the ones that they insure and tell them, well, we're investing in your future.
Absolutely. We invest in Swiss startups that build the future and help you living a better life in the future. Amazing.
Exactly.
But how could you actually get there? What is needed? What players do you need to collaborate more or better to actually make that happen from your perspective? Is there also a need on a political level to make that possible?
So I had recently a discussion with one of my former professors in the MBA, and I said, well, have you already thought about doing a training for people working in those pension funds? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, not really in Switzerland, they're very conservative. But he said in Holland, he did a full session about, telling them what is a fund, what is a VC fund, what is a fund of funds, mm-hmm, and what is there that they invest in? Like, what is a startup? How does it work? And this is a specialty, he's professor of entrepreneurship. And the idea of Benoît Leleu was, at the time in the training is done in Holland, was to say, if you get an idea as an investor, what is a fund of fund, which means a fund investing in other funds, then what is a fund, and then what is a startup, and have a look at different cases of startups, tech or non-tech, you get a much better understanding of how the full ecosystem works. And I think those trainings needs to be done in a sense. So we need training entities to organize such possibilities. We need employees of the pension funds to be exposed to it. Mm-hmm. And I would say as VCs, we have, every time we bump into someone in this space, to participate, to telling them, did you have a look at the opportunity? What prevents you from investing in Swiss startups?
Yeah. What answers do you get today when you ask them these questions?
It's a lot of pushback. Yeah, okay. Let's be clear.
I can imagine, because it's fully, we have a different risk appetite here in Switzerland sometimes, right? That they don't want to, do a risky investment, and startups are certainly considered as a very risky investment from their perspective.
Yeah, and then again, you need a power law approach. They need to understand that within a portfolio of 20 startups, you need one to be exceptionally successful, right, to make the whole return. Which means that there will be many other crashes or companies not doing that well, and it's part of the game, and it's normal.
Yeah, but that's probably hard because that hurts for them. It's a different mode of operation than what they're used to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly. It's
you also mentioned the importance of training. Who should do these trainings? Would VC firms or VC partners be a good way to train pension fund employees, or who should do those trainings?
You have specialized entities like INSEAD in Paris, IMD in Switzerland, HSG in St. Gallen, all those ones have professors that are specialized into entrepreneurship or venture capital or, corporate finance. Mm. And those players could participate to build such programs. And I think there's a business opportunity also for them.
Fair point, yeah. And I also wonder, just to give a bit more sense of urgency about that problem, what happens if we don't fix that problem, if we don't get pension money into Swiss startups? What happens if we don't do that?
Well, the Americans are coming. So that's the American pension funds invested into the large American VCs that are going to invest later stage in the Swiss startups. And so in a sense, it's the whole point about Dominique Maigret in his book is also that you want to have tech sovereignty. You can't imagine building a new operating system that compete with the American ones or even the future Chinese ones to come. But you can imagine that some part of the tech ecosystem you want still to have some kind of control over through the capital that is injected in them.
And then if eventually the startup is doing well, gets sold or does an IPO, then the returns actually come back to Switzerland if we can solve it. Otherwise, they go to the US, and that would be a shame.
Yeah, exactly.
So
good point.
People wake up, it's time to act now.
Yes.
On that regard, what can any individual or also other organizations do to make Switzerland more startup? I know this is a bit of a more open question, but now opening up again, what can we all do, organizations and individuals, to make Switzerland more startup from your perspective?
Yeah, I think networking and proximity is very important. I think finding role models is key. I always been fascinated. I listened probably 6-7 years ago to a podcast, to a talk that Drew Houston, the founder of Dropbox, was giving to Stanford. And he had this very naive expression where he said, well, one day this guy I graduated from my bachelor with, he calls me, very good friend of mine. He said, I just raised 1 million for my startup. And Drew Houston realized that he could do the same. So he started to pitch business angels, and he got $1 million in the bank. And he tells these fantastic stories that he called the bank and he said, what's the maximum amount of money I can put on the bank account? And the woman was like, what do you mean? Well, we're going to get 1 million tomorrow. Is there any cap on how much I can put in the bank account? And so the guys were very naive in terms of business, but they were very good in terms of product and in terms of tech. And they were in the right ecosystem where they thought that a friend could raise money, so they could do it, right? And then they saw that some friends could do some exit or some IPOs, and they said, well, why not us? So what is very important in the ecosystem is to have those role models that succeeded, that show to others how to do it. So when you have guys like Manuel Granacher at Unique, we just invested in Unique. Joe Neal, my colleague, did the investment. And Manuel is also a business angel investor. And when those guys that have done already 2 exits, that are building their third company on a very fast track, also are advising other founders, it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And that needs to be much more systematic. You have the mafia of, the Swiss startup mafia map, which is quite cool, showing that a lot of I've been investor in Beekeeper as part of Swiss Post Ventures, and a lot of the Beekeeper former employees became founders. And this kind of stuff has to be quite systematic. Yeah. And when there start to be big exits, then you could imagine you could imagine founders to be repeat founders, but especially you could imagine the early employees in the company through the stock options, but also through the experience, being able to go back to this time to full entrepreneurship and be the entrepreneurs themselves. I think that's key for the ecosystem. And
that's also probably a good measure of the health of the ecosystem, because if you have more companies coming out of these mafia companies, that's a very good sign for the growth and the emergence of the actual Swiss startup ecosystem.
Yeah, because to be successful as a founder, you need a lot of support. There's no self-made man or self-made woman. You need a lot of advisors. You need the right business angel to step in. You need the right people to guide you to someone else. You need people helping you, like part-time CFOs, to help you build business plan faster because you want to focus on your business. And this ecosystem and this ability of the group to recommend people that should talk to each other is quite important. Yeah. This great book that I just finished called The Power Law from Sebastian Malaby, and who describe one of the co-founders of Sequoia saying, we're in the business of making introductions and answering to introductions. And I think that's a very good saying, that as a VC, you have different type of VCs. You have the operators, you have the guys that have been founders. You also have guys that are very good at network. Mm-hmm. And what those guys do, and I belong to this category, is to try every time they meet someone to say, who should this person talk to? What in my list of contacts, who should be the person to get introduced?
Do you use any tools for that? Because I can imagine if you meet that many people and interesting companies, how do you keep track of all the companies and the people you can introduce to each other?
It's a very good point. So concretely, I'm working on something, but it's still quite early. But I'm thinking about how could we make it a productization? How could we productize this approach? But more concretely, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. And I try to be quite well organized with my LinkedIn, not to accept introduction from people I never met, so that I know that when I look in my LinkedIn database, I have a good reference point.
Right.
And typical CRM is also a good tool, but probably we could do something different and better. Yeah.
I hope there will be a product soon about these aspects.
I hope to. Yeah, I'd be happy to finance it, by the way.
Perfect. Now, let's also look into the future. As we mentioned before, the Swiss startup ecosystem has a certain momentum. Where do you see, are we going from here? What's happening in the future in the Swiss startup ecosystem from your perspective?
So there's one aspect we've not talked about yet, which is merger and acquisition. At some point, as an investor, you need to exit.
Absolutely.
There are two ways to exit. There's IPO and trade sale. And contrary to the general perception, IPOs are a very, very tiny part of the exits. And it's getting lower and lower, except with the SPACs phenomenon that we've seen the past 2 years. But so we need corporates, especially large corporates, to start to think about, especially European ones, to buy more companies and more startups. The Americans are extremely active. There's a poster child in that space is probably Cisco. Cisco is a company that has been built on acquiring a lot of companies. So the Cisco venture capital team is merged within the M&A team, and they work in tandem with the thinking that, so first they used to be, I don't know if it's the case, but they used to be limited partners, which means investors in more than 100 funds. So they see the market they have a knowledge of the market that is just fantastic. On top of it, later stage from Series B or C, they start to co-invest with VCs. So they get positions. And usually it's, they co-invest because they want to be ready in case the company could be acquired. And they're thinking that a Cisco with 15,000 patents, a very innovative company, still believes that the best innovations are out there, is, I think, a very good example for European players that it's very tricky to do innovation within large corporate. Politics is complicated. If you do disruptive innovation, everybody is afraid of it. I had a personal experience when I was at Kudelski at building a product and a team within the organization, a kind of intrapreneurship experience. Mm-hmm. And the politics and the slowness of decision-making really made it a complicated journey, right? And you could imagine that the same concept, finance outside of the organization would have been much faster. And probably the best approach in this case is to say, you'll pay a more expensive price, but you will buy a company that have been built by someone else or someone in a few years. Right. Cisco even has this culture of, they have, I think, a tandem or a triplet of founders who regularly get out as a company, build a startup, and get acquired a few years back. I think they did it 2 or 3 times. And it's a very typical experience. So we need to work on this also as an ecosystem, that corporates get more acquisitive. And that they need to realize that building innovation in-house might not be the best way to do it. That was the case, 70, 80 years ago. You get the Bell Labs and you get Xerox Parks and this kind of very, very iconic companies that have built, like Bell Labs, I think it's 6 or 7 Nobel Prizes, right?
Wow.
It's just mind-blowing.
Crazy.
But nobody does it today, right? Yeah. And today, your innovation, you probably have to acquire it. Yeah. Even Google, that it's seen as a very innovative company, is in fact doing a lot of M&A and acquiring a lot of innovations.
Yeah. Wow. That just blows my mind, because I think that's such an important aspect. And if we can also solve that on top of the pension fund investment, the ecosystem will be going through the roof.
I think we'll get there. Yeah, slowly we'll get there. We'll get the example. Yeah.
And what is next for you at VI Partners? What have you planned for the next 12 months, so to say?
Yeah. So first we have announced that the investment in Unique. We are going to announce 2 other investments in the next weeks, one in Switzerland and one in Germany. So we are continuing to invest with the same thesis of B2B software, helping digital transformation of large corporates and especially industrial players. And we're going first to continue doing investment, but we also, in a year or 2, we're going to raise a new fund. That's going to be a very interesting experience, because then we are going to confront the same people I was talking about. We'll go to family offices, we'll go to corporates, but we'll also go to pension funds. And then it's going to be interesting to see how we can help them better understand what we're doing.
Hopefully they listen to the podcast
I hope so.
and then decide, I need to put my money there. So before we wrap up today's episode, Olivier, we also have some rapid fire questions for you. So I either give you an option to choose from or a quick question you have to answer in one sentence. You ready?
Okay.
What was your summer job as a teenager?
Yeah, that's a good one. So that was very, very tough physical job. So I was working in these companies. I was building blocks to create ovens to do glasses. So imagine the building blocks was electrofused ceramic, which means that we had to put them at 1,300 degrees. So you were working in this massive hall where you had this extremely hot temperature and you had to move those stuff around, liquid, and it was quite dangerous and also fascinating. It was a great experience. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Amazing. What are you most proud of in your life?
My daughters.
Beautiful.
I have 2 daughters, 6 and 9, and just watching them grow and develop, and ask questions and play is mind-blowing.
Imagine. Yeah. Lausanne or Zurich?
Well, I live next to Lausanne. I live in March, very close to EPFL. It's a fantastic place to live, and I really appreciate to come to Zurich. And with VI Partners, I'm now more and more around. So, I benefit from the 2 cities.
Yeah, you take the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Don't be afraid. Talk to people. Yeah,
nice.
Talk to people. I think you can learn so much by approaching people, randomly and hear what they have to say, and then you build a filter about what you should take in, and you confront ideas, and they recommend you. People listen, and usually they want to help you, so they tell you, "Oh, Sylvain, you should talk to this person about your idea." Right.
That's the best way. The last one for you today: investor or founder?
Well, now, as a VC, I'm a bit of both, in a sense that, sure, I'm an investor, but we have a business to run, right? We have to raise new funds, we have to, hire employees.
Right.
So we're a bit of both. But clearly, I love that job of supporting founders and to be close to them and helping give them best. Yeah.
Amazing. Olivier, thank you so much for coming on the show. Many successful, more investments in the future, and all the best.
Thank you, Sylvain. And thank you for Swisspreneur. I think you're doing a great job. It's very nice.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.